The Federal Motor Carrier Safety Administration revised the Hours of Service regulations. According to administration, new rules will provide greater flexibility for drivers without affecting safety. New Hours of Service regulations must be complied from September 29 and not before. So, what are the main changes? The first rule expands the short-haul exception to 150 air miles and allows a 14-hour work shift to take place as a part of the exception. Under the previous rule, drivers using the short-haul exception with 100 air mile radius may not be on duty for more than 12 hours. And the new short-haul exception extends the maximum driving distance from a 100 to 150 air mile radius and the maximum duty period from 12 to 14 hours. While operating under the short-haul exception, drivers need to start and end the shift in the same location and to have at least 8 hours of duty for passenger carrier or 10 hours of duty for property carrier between duty periods. The second one is adverse driving conditions exception. The rule expands the driving window during adverse driving conditions by up to an additional 2 hours. Adverse driving conditions mean things that you didn't know about while starting your run, like snow, fog, or a shutdown of traffic due to a crash. Adverse driving conditions do not include situations that you should have known about, such as a typical rush hour periods. Under the previous rule, drivers were granted an exception of 2 extra hours to the 11-hour driving limit for the property carriers and 10-hour driving limit for passenger carriers. And the Hours of Service final rule extends the duty day by 2 hours when adverse driving conditions are encountered. So, when using adverse driving conditions exception, property carriers can drive up to 13 driving hours within a 16-hour driving window, and passenger carriers have 12 driving hours within a 17 hours on-duty period. The third rule, 30-minute break requirement. Under the previous rule, the property carrying drivers were required to take a 30-minute break after 8 hours on duty. By the Hours of Service final rule, a 30-minute break is required after driving for 8 hours without at least a 30-minute break. Driving time does not to be consecutive. 30-minute break is satisfied by time, off-duty, sleeper berth, on-duty, not driving, or combo. It means that new rules allow you to log the 30-minute break with your on-duty non-driving period, which means you can take it during a fuel stop, at a loading dock, etc. And the last one, sleeper berth provision, modifies the sleeper berth exception to allow a driver to meet the 10-hour minimum off-duty requirement by spending at least 7 rather than at least 8 hours of that period in the berth and a minimum off-duty period of at least 2 hours spent inside or outside the berth, provided that 2 periods total at least 10 hours and that neither qualified period counts against the 14-hour driving window. These revisions to the Hours of Service rule change the split sleeper berth rule significantly. The rule allows driver to split a 10-hour off-duty period as long as one off-duty period, whether in or out of the sleeper berth, is at least 2 hours long, and the other involves at least 7 consecutive hours in the sleeper berth. When used together, neither period counts against the 14-hour driving window. 8-hour sleeper berth period by itself can no longer be excluded from the 14-hour driving window. In other words, as long as the shorter period of the split is at least 2 hours, you can use it to stop the clock. In this example, the driver comes on duty at 5 a.m. after having 10 consecutive hours off duty, which means he or she can drive for up to 11 hours in a 14-hour window. The driver used those 11 hours by 10 p.m., then enters the sleeper berth for 7 consecutive hours. Because the driver accumulated at least 10 hours of rest using a combination of 3 consecutive hours off duty, 1 to 4 p.m., and 7 consecutive hours in the sleeper berth, 10 p.m. to 5 a.m. the next day, the driver has not violated the 11-hour driving limit. Because both periods are qualifying rest breaks when used together, they can both be excluded from the 14-hour drive-in window, so there is no 14 hours violation.